Good evening, fellow citizens. I want to talk a little bit about godlessness and the role of psychedelics in the spiritual experience. So, after bouncing around in my mind all of the causes of the decadence and the widespread mental issues, let's say, for lack of a better term, coming to my mind. Depression, anger issues, isolation, disconnection from humanity, basically. The disconnection from humanity, I used to look at that as a causal factor. Now I look at it as a symptom. And ultimately, as I opened this talk up with the two topics that I mentioned, I think the root cause of all of this is godlessness. And if you look in the Bible at the beginning, I'm not all the way through the Bible yet, but I am reading it at the moment. At the beginning, God keeps warning Moses, watch these people because they're going to carve goats out of wood and they're going to start worshiping these idols instead of me, the one true God. The point of that story that I take out from it after other considerations is that people are going to worship something. They have to. It's part of our experience, is the need to put our faith in something higher than us. And you look through all antiquity, even today, and I'll give some examples of today in a moment, but it's always been the case. And the Hebrews recognize this, and that's why you find that near the beginning of the Bible. But today, we have all kinds of idols. One of the biggest ones is science. So a lot of people worship science very religiously, and they don't realize that they're being religious about it when they're doing it. But for example, for a person to say that they know as a fact that there is no God is a faith-based position, and it's dogmatic, actually. Any rational discussion about the topic has to end in ambiguity, not in certainty, because it's an ambiguous subject and there is no certainty. So it's almost like a self-defense or a defense mechanism to state the non-existence of God as a fact and to stand by that even in the face of the most strongest arguments you could make to the contrary. So some people worship science, some people worship celebrity, some people worship politicians, although that's probably waning, I would say, at this point. Anyway, people are going to worship something, and so then the choice becomes what to worship. Once you realize the fact of the matter, then you get to choose what you're going to worship. And a lot of people have some criticisms about Jordan Peterson, different ways that he is misleading or can provide disinformation or is self-contradictory in behavior. He says himself, what is a belief? Something that you say or something that you do? And some of the things that he says, he hasn't been able to follow through in his personal experience completely. So anyway, one thing that he's said that I think is extremely relevant is that some things are true in the sense that they can be empirically proven one way or the other, scientifically quantified. Other things are true in the sense that when you live by them, the results in your personal life experience are positive in the manifestation. So, in that sense, what you're going to worship is more or less true based on how they serve you. And so to have a belief in God, whether that's, some Eastern tradition or the Judeo-Christian tradition or something else entirely, life with God is more worth living, and depression is easier to stave off when you have God on your side. And some of this sounds a little cliche, but once you realize that no matter what you do, in order to be mentally healthy, you need to put your faith in something and worship it. And in order for that to be effective, in terms of your health, it has to be a wholesome, nourishing belief. Now, God, however you want to look at God, it's not going to help you to, in my opinion, go to church or some temple or whatever else happens to be, listen to the doctrine and accept it at face value for exactly what it is. In other words, it's not going to help to be spoon-fed your religious belief. What needs to happen is a direct religious experience. This used to be ritualized in initiation ceremonies and different types of festivals and things in antiquity, but we don't have that in the modern secular world really per se. And that's where I jump over to the psychedelic aspect of the conversation. Because a lot of people today, they're either atheist or they're agnostic, but the main point is that they're very, very hesitant to put their faith into any kind of divinity or deity. But, like I said before, without even realizing it in some kind of act of self-deception or even just ignorance, they're already worshiping a god, whatever their god happens to be, whether their god is science, whether their god is Jason Statham. Now, he's a bad example, but Keanu Reeves maybe be a little better. So you can't intellectually convince yourself that there is a God. That's not possible. It's not an intellectual understanding. It's a felt reality. And you can't have that felt reality without a mystical experience of some kind. Now, in terms of the psychedelic studies that have been done, one thing that they found when they were studying smoking cessation and helping people to quit smoking was that in using mushrooms as a treatment, it was almost 100% effective if the person had a mystical experience during the treatment. And if you look at the Alcoholics Anonymous steps, one of the steps, I don't know which one, I've never been through the program, one of the steps is to accept a higher power into your life to help you, or something to that effect. Now, that's a wonderful part of the program, and I think that it's extremely necessary because, like I said before, the root cause of all of these issues that we have in society in the West, I think, is mainly due to our lack of faith in God and our godlessness, in other words. So psychedelic therapy, the research going into that right now seems to indicate that a mystical experience helps in all of these mental health aspects. And it is, in other words, a direct experience of the divine, which is a felt reality. And after you have that, it opens your mind. Even if you don't come away from that mystical experience a firm believer in God. And again, I would say don't go swallow any one doctrine and just call it a day. What you should do is read maybe some spiritual text after having or before and after having a mystical experience, and flesh out your understanding of the notion of God that people have had for thousands of years in different locations. The more you study the concept of higher beings and higher dimensions and higher powers, you can develop your own opinion of, or even your own felt reality, your own worldview of how to incorporate the Godhead into your experience. And that personal relationship with God, and you start looking for communications and stuff from, let's say, your guardian angel or the devas, as the Buddhists would say. You start to look for these communications in your life, and then you'll be surprised when you notice that it seems to be occurring. It's almost as if God's waiting for you to start asking, and then he'll start answering. But anyway, that direct experience it's vital to that felt reality, which goes beyond an intellectual understanding, which isn't enough to convince an atheist to adopt a religious position. But a direct experience is. And so, I'm glad that there's psychedelic research going on right now. My roommate, who has some mental health concerns, is currently filling out application to be evaluated through one of these research programs for her issues. And one of the prerequisites to that is having a therapist sign off on it and all this stuff. And she's got an appointment with a therapist coming up. And synchronously, the appointment with the therapist was concretized, like set in stone. And then the next morning, she got a word from the research group that they're interested in her application, and at that point she found out that it was necessary to have an ongoing therapeutic relationship with a therapist, which had just come into fruition the day before. So again, the synchronous aspect of experience is said to be one indicator that God hears you, so to speak, or at least that's the way I see it. It's communications from the divine begin to occur in your life when you start looking for it, and when you start praying, when you start communicating with the divine, with these higher powers. So anyway, a direct experience is necessary, and inviting God back into our lives in a collective manner throughout society is the main key in healing, in the healing process, and also perhaps in righting the wrongs, correcting course in the increasing decadence and degeneration of our culture and society. So anyway, I hope you find that valuable. A little bit of contemplation, food for thought perhaps. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day, and God bless you.